So get this. He was an advisor to a sultan and a scholar for a pope. He explained the entire Islamic world to its biggest European rivals, but then he also helped a cardinal create a better translation of the Quran. How could one man live so successfully on both sides of what was essentially a holy war? This is the story of a true historical mystery, a man who didn't just visit other worlds, he lived in them.
So on one hand, you have Al-Hassan ibn Muhammad al-Wazan. He's a Muslim diplomat, comes from a noble family. But on the other hand, you have Giovanni Leone de' Medici, a Christian scholar who was actually named after the Pope himself, Leo X. How does one person hold two completely opposite identities? Especially back then, during this incredibly intense period of war between Islam and Christendom.
And that right there, that's the big puzzle we're going to try and solve in this explainer. To get to the bottom of it, we've got to follow his unbelievable journey and figure out who the real man was behind these two masks.
His entire story starts at a literal crossroads of civilizations. And really, this one fact would shape the rest of his life.
I mean, think about this timing. He was born in Granada, which was the very last Muslim stronghold in Spain, at the exact moment it fell to the Catholic monarchs in 1492. So his family had to flee, which made him a refugee from the day he was born. His whole life literally began in this collision of worlds. It really set the stage for everything that was about to happen.
All right, so let's start with his first identity, Hassan al-Wazan, a man of the Dar al-Islam, which is a term that means, the world of Islam, the lands where Muslim rulers were in charge.
He grew up in Fez, Morocco, which was this major intellectual hub. But Hassan didn't just study the world from a book. He got out there and saw it. As a diplomat for the Sultan, he went on these incredible journeys, all the way from the legendary city of Timbuktu to Cairo, where he was actually there to witness the Ottoman conquest of Egypt with his own eyes. These weren't just vacations. We're talking high-stakes missions that gave him this incredible insight into the power and politics of his world.
And don't get it twisted, this was a huge deal. Years later, even the Vatican's own librarian wrote it down. As Hassan, he was a real political player on the world stage. Out there negotiating for a powerful sultan, gathering intelligence, he was shaping events.
So let's be super clear here. Hassan wasn't some nobody. He was an elite, a member of the Islamic world's upper crust. He was well-traveled, well-connected, and super influential. He was an insider through and through. But his entire world was about to get flipped completely upside down.
So his next chapter kicks off with this really violent twist of fate that throws him right into what was called the Dar al-Harb, the world of war, which was the name for all the lands outside of Islamic rule. Okay, so get this. In 1518, Christian pirates capture his ship. But they immediately realized this guy was brilliant. So he wasn't just sold into slavery, he was presented as a kind of human treasure to Pope Leo X himself. Can you imagine? 2 years later, he's in St. Peter's Basilica, getting baptized and given the Pope's own name. And just like that, Hassan the diplomat was gone, and Leo the scholar was born.
I mean, it was a complete 180 of his life. He went from being an agent working for a sultan to being the possession of a pope. He was a captive, sure, but a very valuable one, and now he was living at the very center of power of what his homeland considered its greatest enemy. So what do you do when you're in a situation like that, an impossible position? Well, he writes, and it's in his writing that we find the best clues about who he really was.
While he's in Italy, he writes his masterpiece, The Description of Africa. And this book becomes Europe's #1 source on the continent for centuries. Just think about the tightrope he was walking here. He's explaining the culture and politics of his home to a Christian audience that sees his home as a mortal enemy.
And his method for doing this was just brilliant. See, he didn't just translate words, he translated whole concepts. To explain a caliph, who is the successor to the prophet, he used the Italian word for the pope. An Islamic qadi becomes a judice, or judge. He was basically building a bridge of understanding, mapping his world onto words and ideas his European captors could actually get.
And this is where we get to the absolute paradox of his life. You have a man, born a Muslim, now living as a Christian, using his deep, deep knowledge of Islam to help a Catholic cardinal make a better Latin translation of the Quran. He was somehow an insider and an outsider to both worlds at the exact same time.
So, where does that leave us? Was he Hassan, the loyal diplomat? Or Leo, the Christian convert? All the evidence points to an answer that's not nearly that simple. He might have been both. And, neither.
The historian Natalie Zemon Davis, in her book Trickster Travels, she offers this amazing solution. She says the best way to understand him is as a trickster. Now, that doesn't mean a con man, but a really clever survivor. Someone who thrives in that gray area, who crosses all kinds of boundaries, and operates in the space between cultures.
So let's just lay out the case for a second. He lived under two names and two faiths. He navigated the highest levels of power in two warring civilizations, Islam and Christendom. He translated his home for its enemies. He used this state of being in between to survive and to create his life's work. Even his death is a total mystery. Some people think he actually went back to North Africa in the end, crossing one last border. His real identity? It was the journey itself.
In the end, you just can't put Leo Africanus in a simple box. His life was this incredible performance, a masterclass in navigating the cultural, religious, and political fault lines of his time. And it kind of forces us to ask, in our own world, which feels more and more divided every day, what can we learn from a guy who mastered the art of living in between?